Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way next, Off 90. We visit with an immigrant from the Philippines. A look at photos before cell phones. An indie electronic band from Mankato. And a recipe from Chef Shari Mukherjee. It's all coming up on your next stop, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this trip, Off 90. Kim Sin's family fled Cambodia during the reign of Pol Pot. His family moved through several refugee camps before being able to land in the United States. Now he lives in Rochester and is an RCTC graduate. Kim hopes people understand that we all came to the U.S. for the same reason.
Hi, my name is Kim Sin. I'm from Cambodia. I came to the U.S. In 1983. An advocate working within the Cambodian community for 20 years. The journey, coming from a war-torn country like Cambodia, and not a lot of people really knew about Pol Pot and the killing that was going on. Pol Pot was able to overthrow the Cambodian government and took power during that time. And so it caused a lot of Cambodians to flee and to try to escape to Thailand. In the refugee camp, we had, my mom and dad, and then I have 4 brothers, and then 2 sisters and myself. They had, school for people to go. People were living in small huts. And so it's very crowded. A lot of people got sick, and some are, die of the disease because they weren't very clean. The sanitation was really bad. The United Nations would bring all these food, and then they would distribute it to each family. So if you had a larger family, you get a larger quantity of food. And my mom had to really make sure that the way she cooked and feed the kid was able to feed the whole month, or else if she was cooking too much, then it would cause her to be, shortage. We had to travel from one refugee camp to another. From Kawadang, we had to go to Chunburi. After Chunburi, we stay there for 6 months, and then we go to Kachung. After Kachung, then we went to the Philippines. And so in the Philippines, that's where they done a lot of quarantine for a lot of refugees that were coming from Laos, Hmong, Vietnam, and it's not easy. And a lot of parents would sacrifice and do so much for their kid, in order for them to come to another country that provide opportunity. Especially my mom and my dad want us to come to the U.S. It was a lot of people talk about, the U.S. is like a paradise. It's like heaven. So many opportunity. And so finally we passed all the tests. Our family didn't have any, medical record, any issues. So we were given a visa to come to the U.S. To make things short is that when we don't really understand about each other, that's what create that stigma and hatred. Is that people really need to understand that we all came here for the same reason. This country was based on immigration. People came here because of religious, or they were being persecuted by the government. And it's the same reason for a lot of refugee and immigrant. And so we all need to understand their struggle, their needs. And if we all really focus on the need, then everybody will understand and appreciate one another. Thank you so much for this opportunity. and I really appreciate it.
Long before there were cell phone cameras, images were sometimes recorded on large glass plate negatives. The Fillmore County Historical Society in Fountain, Minnesota has a collection of such negatives. They came from a photographer who documented life in Lanesboro and the surrounding area in the early 1900s. The museum was kind enough to take us into their vault.
Hey everybody, it's Sarah here from the Fillmore County Historical Society in Fountain, Minnesota. And today I'm going to take you behind the scenes to a little scene spot in our museum where we house over 10,000 of the Matt Boo glass plate negative collection. Now, Matt Boo was a photographer in Lanesboro from around 1910 to 1950, and he was well known for traveling around the county and taking pictures of life events as well as interesting picturesque scenes that struck his fancy. So we're going to go into the vault. I'm gonna have a little fun, I think, pulling out one of his glass plate negatives and taking a little up close look. So here we go. There's the vault. And you can see we have stacks of the negatives. I'm gonna go ahead and put you right down here and kind of get a nice view. And because these are so fragile, I'm going to go ahead and put on some gloves. And today I'm feeling like 44 is a pretty awesome number. So I'm going to go into stack 44. And that's a way for us to be able to locate the photos that are in our index to where they're actually stored in the vault here. So 44 does happen to be right in front. And I'm going to go ahead and pick out the first one. So you can see when I take a look here, it's from bin 44, stack 44, and it's of the Arundel Lutheran Church confirmation class of 1924. And one thing to note is the way they're organized is whoever commissioned the photo. So on this specific one, it's Reverend Baki. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set it down on my cart here. And what's kind of neat about this one is it actually has a copy of what the glass plate negative looks like, because when I pull it out, you'll notice that it's actually an inverted color scheme. It's kind of fun. I'll show you this too. You can see that at some point this was in a shipping envelope. I'll kind of get it a little closer. You can see it's got the inverted like a true negative. So that's why having those photocopies are really helpful, so we can do kind of a quick identification. And so what's even neater about this is each one of these people have been identified. So to introduce your confirmation class from the Arundel, from the front row, Alma Anderson, Myrtle Boyum, Pastor Baki, Judith Adnes, Ethel Lee. In the back we have Bernhard Johnsgaard, Myrtle Makegard, Oli Boyum, Alice Johnsgaard, Jerome Agramson, Esther Paulson, and Henry Benson. Right there, your graduating class of Arundel Lutheran Church, 1924. So thanks so much for joining us here in the vault of the Fillmore County Historical Society, where we could show you a little bit closer look to our glass plate negative collection. And appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoyed it.
Ever wonder why most honey tastes the same no matter where you get it? It's because the usual honey is blended from sources across the country, melding the unique scents and flavors of local flora into a sweet but uniform product. The bee shed takes a different approach. Every flowering species produces a honey with a unique flavor and scent, and the bee shed works in harmony with the seasonal blooms by doing multiple harvests, each yielding honey with a Minnesota unique flavor, scent, and color. Rochester chef Shari Mukherjee collaborates with the bee shed to share this delicious recipe with you.
Hi, Hi, welcome back. Today I am going to talk about honey. I have some beautiful honeys here from the Bee Shed, local honey distributor. They do a lot of great stuff for the bees in our ecosystem, so I highly recommend checking them out. So today we are going to be using this buckwheat stout honey, and we are going to be glazing some beautiful salmon. I've already cooked the salmon in my air fryer, perfectly cooked, 6 minutes at 400 degrees. And I'm just gonna glaze this and then sprinkle some sesame seeds on top. Now here we have their summer solstice honey. This honey is a lot lighter, more floral, really, really delicious. This is the kind of honey you want to use with your bruschettas and, on your cheese board. Actually, both would be great on the cheese board, to be honest with you. But today we're gonna be using this one to make a nectarine salad that we're gonna serve with our salmon.
My name is Chris Shad. I am the co-founder and co-owner of the Bee Shed. We're a local beekeeping company here based in Rochester, Minnesota. Flowering plants are producing nectar. The bees are gathering up the nectar and they're bringing it back to the hive. But because it's coming from plants and every plant species is different, the nectar coming out of each plant is a little bit different. We understand that things are blooming different times of year. Different plants are blooming different times of year. And if you put a little more work into it, you can pull the honey at different times of year. So we pull our honey in June, July, August, and September. They all taste different, they look different, they smell different, because different things are blooming. This is June. That's July. See if I can do this. I don't have real big hands, but that's August. And then this is September. This is actually September of last year. We haven't pulled this year yet. So you can get these all up there. They're all different color and they're all different flavors. And then we do have one other honey that we've started harvesting, and this is a varietal, so it's not a seasonal honey, and we call it our buckwheat stout. It looks like that. So if you compare buckwheat to wildflower, it's this bold, rich flavor. It comes from fields of buckwheat.
It off here, I mixed about a tablespoon of the buckwheat stout honey with a little bit of water, only about maybe half a tablespoon. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pastry brush. If you don't have a pastry brush, it's fine. The spoon works perfect. And we're just going to dip it in and brush it on. I like to dilute it with a little bit of water just because it's easier to paint onto the food. Now I'm just going to take a few little sesame seeds. These are toasted black and white sesame seeds. And we're gonna go ahead and just sprinkle some on. I'm not gonna go too heavy with the coating. Summer is almost done. If you have nectarines available, peaches, figs, any of those really beautiful summer fruits, go ahead and throw them in. It's gonna work perfect. So I have the summer solstice honey. I'm gonna take about a tablespoon, big spoonful. A little squeeze of lemon juice, and then ginger. And I'm just using this little micro grater. You do want to get it pretty thin, so cutting it up isn't really the best option for this. You do want to kind of grate it in. And then we're just going to whisk that together. To our nectarines, we are going to go ahead and just drizzle this honey ginger right across. I can barely think of a better way to use honey. This just really highlights honey itself. It also highlights the fruit, the summer flowers that this honey was made from. It all is just, it's beautiful. Next step, a little bit of black pepper. A pinch of salt. We always want to add a pinch of salt. It helps to balance the sweetness of the fruit, as well as the sweetness of the honey. And to finish it off, we're just gonna take some mint leaves and we're just gonna plop some of those down. How easy was that? We have two honey-forward dishes. We have the salmon and we have our nectarine salad. Super beautiful. I hope you guys like this. I hope you guys give this a try. If you have any questions, let me know. These recipes will be put onto my blog, so check there if you want them. I hope you guys enjoyed these recipes. Until next time, thank you.
Good Night Gold Dust is a Mankato-based indie electronic band who've shared the stage with national and international acts. They describe their song Second Moon as filled with near misses, escape, loss, and recovery. Here they are in a music video performing Second Moon.
keeps repeating. It could have been you, 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 it could have been anyone. Into dark water, the second moon reflected. You're listening for your name, in the whispers of leaves. Isn't it something to keep hearing nothing but it could have been you, 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 could have been you, it could have been you, 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 co Could've been you, 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 could've been
Vangie Castro moved to the United States with their family at 4 years old. They fled the Philippines during the rule of Ferdinand Marcos. Vangie talks about the path they took from the Philippines to the United States.
I'm Vangie Castro. I am a community organizer, civil rights activist. Worked with the Diversity Council for about over 7 years here in Rochester, Minnesota. I'm an immigrant to the United States, naturalized citizen. Originally grew up in California, but I was born in the Philippines, in the southern central part, which is called Zamboanga City. And the dialect that is spoken there is Visayan. We came to the United States about 1978. So yeah, I was about 4 years old at the time. And my father was a certified public accountant in the Philippines. And during that time, it was the president was Ferdinand Marcos. And you know, it was not a really great time for folks who were not friendly to the government or to the president, because at that time, I think martial law was in place. A lot of people were either being taken or murdered if they were political, not necessarily if they were against the government. I mean, even if you just, my sister told me a little bit about the story, that because she's 10 years older than me, so she knows a little bit more. She remembers coming over. And so my dad worked in a bank and the bank got bombed. And so if we did not come to the United States for political asylum, I don't think my father would have lived. So my father went ahead, came to the United States. My mom was 40 when she had me. So she was about 44 when she came to the United States. And I imagine what it's like to move to an entirely entirely different country, not know the language very well, if at all, and then try to make a whole new life, and with 4 children, 4 young children. And so when I look at the refugee population and the immigrant population that are coming here to provide a better life for their young people, for their children, you do not want to leave your home, I would imagine, unless you're forced out, right? And I think the narrative that immigrants are coming here to, take away people's jobs and things like that, I think is false. And we come here because we have to. At the end of the day, I am American. And that's what I tell people when they ask me, what am I? I'm American, but if you really want to know where I was born, ask that question. Or, what's my ethnicity versus where are you from? But I'm from here, and that's Rochester, Minnesota. That's where I'm from. I actually embrace my immigrant status. I think it is more of a badge of honor to be able to come to this country and make a life for myself and for my family. And I think, and especially, for my parents, I think it was a huge blessing and an honor for them to be here in the United States and be able to make a life and provide a better life and a safer life for their children.
We've reached the end of this tour off 90. Thanks for riding along. See you next time. But before we go, John Swanson with the Minnesota Marine Art Museum dives deep into their collection to share pieces with us from the vault.
Hello and welcome. I'm John Swanson, Curator of Collections and Exhibitions at the Minnesota Marine Art Museum in Winona. Today, I'd like to share an item from our vault. We have a ship model of one of America's most famous ships, USS Constitution. This ship model is of USS Constitution. The scale model is built from white oak taken from the original hull when the ship was reconditioned in 1927. Some of the principal fastenings are molded from copper used in the original ship, supplied by no other than Paul Revere. The cabins are finished in white enamel and furnished with mahogany couches, desks, tables, and sideboards. The model was built between 1928 and 1930 by Wilbur Decker, an American. The model was in the collection of the Minneapolis Institute of Art, where Decker served on their board of directors, and in 2012 it was donated to the collection of the Minnesota Marine Art Museum. In 1794, the United States Congress authorized the creation of a Navy and appropriated funds for building 6 frigates. Frigates are fast, maneuverable, square-rigged, and armed naval vessels, smaller than the traditional European ships. Constitution is 204 feet long. The height of the mainmast is 220 feet high, and she has a width or a beam of 43 feet. She was capable of doing 13 knots, which is approximately 15 miles per hour, and carried 54 guns and a crew of 450. Constitution was designed by Joshua Humphreys and Josiah Fox and built at Hart's Shipyard in Boston. Paul Revere supplied the original copper bolts and sheathing. Constitution saw service against the Barbary pirates in the Mediterranean Sea and against the navies of both France and England in the Atlantic Ocean. In 1830, having been condemned for scrap, the ship was saved by a public outcry prompted by Oliver Wendell Holmes' poem Old Ironsides, and in 1855 was recommissioned as a training ship. Early in the 20th century, she again escaped destruction. Constitution was again restored in 1973 in anticipation of America's bicentennial in 1976. Today, the vessel remains in Boston as a floating museum and is the oldest commissioned ship in the U.S. Navy. Thank you for taking a look at this seldom-seen ship model at the Minnesota Marine Art Museum.
Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.